And I'm just, I'm really sorry. Okay.
Thank you, sir. I want to pick up, Mr. James, right where you left off, because when you were offered the chance to be President of the United States, the first thing that you said was something that Ms. White has said, which is, God, I would fund these institutions better. And it was affirmed by Ms. Abate. And so if Senator Kennedy and I were going to partner on a bill to try to stop this from happening, the first thing that you would say would be, some of it is just this massively under-resourced institutions, as the minority witness is saying, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. I said that before he left, so I might be able to get a partner.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir.
I said that so I might be able to get a partner. And I'm just going to say, Ms. White, I pray for the day you do not have to come down here and tell this story over and over and over again. That even when Congress did things in a bipartisan way under a Republican president to do sentencing reform, programs for prisons that Senator Cornyn and others championed, we cannot get those things done if we're not funding the institutions that are supposed to be doing that work. It's embarrassing that you have to come down here and tell the truth of all of our law enforcement agencies, the fact that you all are so underfunded and so underpaid and so under-resourced, and that this has been echoed by majority witnesses here is just a further testimony to the truth that you tell. And I'm going to do everything I can, as long as New Jersey keeps me in this job, to listen to this woman from Arkansas and try to address those issues.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Wingfield and Ms. Hernandez, I just want to build some more background to support some of the statements that we've heard from other witnesses, if you all don't mind. And maybe the first thing I just would want to bluntly ask you, as horrific as your experiences were, the women that you were with, do you know other firsthand stories that you heard from other women of their experiences of sexual assault? Either one of you can go first.
I absolutely do.
Could you flesh that answer out, Ms. Hernandez first, and we'll go to Ms. Wingfield?
I said I absolutely do.
No, I heard that.
Oh.
Could you just give me more context to that? Did it happen one time? Did you hear from did other women confide in you in some of these experiences?
Too many times to count. While I was at FCI Tallahassee, I had friends. it was just so many different departments. I knew everybody there. I was there for a long time, so a lot of the inmates, I had time to do. So I knew a lot of inmates because I worked recreation, but every department had something going on with an officer and an inmate.
Ms. Wingfield, do you want to tell me a little bit about you hearing from other people that this behavior might not have been something that you just experienced? Could you turn on? Thank you very much, Ms. White.
Yes. So I've heard the stories. In Camp Scott, you had the deputies there. They stayed, at Camp Scott at trailers. You can actually see they would have certain girls go to their trailers and say that they're helping them clean up for extra things or whatever. But when they would come back, when certain girls would come back, they would just tell us guess what happened, guess what I did, or guess what, and it was just like it was talked about so much. It was like it was normal,
Right, and these are this would be considered in a court of law hearsay. This is not that, and I don't want to affirm that these things are happening. But I guess the point I'm trying to drive to is, and maybe Mr. James or Ms. Abate, you can tell me that I hear from my readings that is there an underreporting problem?
Thank you for that question, Senator Booker. Statistically, in South Carolina, we've had an increase in reporting, and that's because of the robust programs that we've built in South Carolina Department of Corrections and Department of Juvenile Justice, putting out more information, posters, phones, different reporting methods for incarcerated persons to contact somebody from the outside or contact somebody on the inside to do something about allegations of sexual abuse or sexual harassment. We in South Carolina have a very supportive governor and a very supportive executive leadership team. Mr. Brian Sterling, Mr. Brian Sterling, the director of South Carolina Department of Corrections, is an advocate of sending incarcerated persons back into the community better than we receive them. And that includes those who get injured mentally, physically, or emotionally while inside of corrections. and he supports the efforts that we have tried to do at his Department of Corrections to have a zero tolerance policy and attack every single allegation with everything we have to ensure that we send the citizens of South Carolina back into the community whole.
Understood. Ms. Abate, is there, in your opinion, an underreporting problem?
Yes, absolutely. With all the barriers and disincentives and dangers that come when you report, to me, it's a wonder that anyone ever reports. It's an incredible act of bravery or desperation or both, because women aren't believed. It takes being repeatedly sexually abused or raped by staff to come forward. That's not even okay, right? When staff come forward and report something's going on, nothing's done. So why would other folks report? But when you've got when you're working towards a culture of reporting, like Mr. James in South Carolina, that's when you do see the increases in reports. That's when you can understand the dynamics in the specific facility, understand how it's happening so you can understand how to prevent it and how to support the people involved in the abuse that witness it, that endure it, because it affects the entire facility. If a staff is sexually abusing a person in their custody, they are not on their post. Who is? If a staff can take a couple people, a couple women, a couple girls into a certain area, what's to say that those two girls or that one woman or that man couldn't take staff into that same area and hold them hostage or harm them? It compromises security. And so often, as you've heard from at least Ms. Wingfield, when there is sexual abuse, people give their victims items that might be candy or maybe cigarettes or a cell phone, stuff they ought not have, that exposes the people who receive it to vulnerability, prosecution maybe, right? So there's all these disincentives.
Ms. Hernandez, I'm sorry to cut you off, Ms. Abate. That the bringing of gifts, the bringing of things, is this contraband issue part of the process?
Yes.
And you see that as a way of creating a context in which sexual assault happens.
That is very true.
And then I think that some of the other witnesses said either in their written testimony or what they're saying now, but I think it's really important to note this ability to contact people on the outside, because reporting, I imagine, is intimidating if you're reporting it to people inside. But when you had that change and you had less ability to contact people on the outside, did that make it more difficult for you to talk about your experiences or maybe seek help?
Yes, made it very difficult. And that would be the time when I need the most support.
And you're
we
seeing
didn't
that.
have that.
And Ms. Abate, you're seeing that as well.
Isolation breeds vulnerability, and it enhances the trauma that people have suffered. It's a way to control people and keep them quiet. It's a way to make people submit to advances, and it's never providing sexual favors. Favors are something you give to someone at a party because you like them, and that is not what's happening in these facilities. It's submitting to sexual coercion from staff. And the mere threat of being placed in segregation, which would mean that Ms. Hernandez wouldn't be able to call her daughters or what have you, she's going to put up less of a resistance. Anybody in that situation. I don't mean to personalize it.
No,
and so when you cut people off from support from the outside, from their family, it's devastating. When you cut people off from support from the outside, from trained counselors who can help you decide whether and how to report abuse, that can be devastating too. Even when you move someone from different housing units, especially in women's prisons, women form families, if you will, little groups, and draw support from one another, and you take them away from their support systems. That enhances their vulnerability. Everybody who reports sexual abuse who's placed in segregation, there goes their vulnerability. It completely enhances their vulnerability. So yes, it's a huge problem.
And Ms. Hernandez and Ms. Wingfield, you both sort of made allusions like that the PREA videos and information you were given when you first came in felt inadequate to you? I mean, that's my word, not yours. But in other words, there's certain information that should be given to you, but that did not prove resourceful at all?
When I first had seen that video, that was the only video I saw during orientation when I first got to prison. First of all, it's not enforced. They stick you in a psychology conference room, and it's everybody that's going to orientation in that moment. And then they don't stick around. They don't, like I said, it's not enforced. The facilitator leaves the room, and then you're left with a bunch of inmates who are just taking whatever we want out the video because it's like a joking matter. I can personally tell you that the video I watched the joke was like outstanding forever. It was, don't take that Snicker bar, don't eat that honey bun that you're offered from another inmate. And again, it doesn't really, I don't remember not one time thinking about somebody who was supposed to protect me and knowing what my rights were.
And Ms. Abate, you would agree that the orientation and information given is important, something we should be looking at?
It's super important, and I think on the outside, we too make jokes about that particular video about the candy bar left on the bed, and be careful because other inmates are going to get you. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but it's not where the most of the problem's coming from. But there needs to be robust prisoner education, and more so, you need to like talk the talk, walk the walk when folks are in staff come around, and create that culture of safety, the culture of reporting, and just increases safety for the people who are incarcerated, the people who work there, the facility overall, and ultimately the community.
And
It begins with education and training.
Mr. James, I'm going to direct the question to you, then I'm going to yield to my colleagues who've arrived and as they've settled in. The biggest remaining gaps in PREA or prison conditions in general that you would say that allow for sexual violence in prisons to continue?
Thank you for that question. I think it's a shortage of staff.
You're returning to the same point before.
Same point, sir.
I love that you've just reinforced that for the record. I'm going to cut you off there, and I'm going to ask Mr. Senator Oss up. I was just told, Senator Welsh, if you're prepared.